never mattered more historically and culturally. Stick around because he's going to be recommending some Ukrainian rappers. All right, I think that is it. Let's get it going. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you are doing well. Today it is time for an exclusive conversation with the one and only singer and songwriter, Rex Orange County, fresh off the release of his brand new LP, Who Cares? We're going to be talking about that and anything else that comes up in the conversation. Hey man, thank you for coming through. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm feeling great. Honestly, I'm a little tired, but I feel good. I'm happy this album's out now. It's been a little while. I feel great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. The record is out. Is it a weight off your shoulders?
In a way, not a lot to be real. Like I feel like I've been sat on it for quite a while, and
Yeah.
and I was really happy with it when I made it. But I figured it's I feel like it would be great if it was released when it was finished. If it was released the other day or 2 years from now, it's the same album, And I'm sort of like my opinion on it hasn't changed, I'm
Yeah.
still really happy with it.
No, a consistent thing I've been hearing from a lot of artists over the past couple of years is that sometimes their release and recording plans have had to be put off because of the pandemic and stuff. Was that the case for you as well?
Yeah, no, the release I kind of had a little more free reign on as far as when it could come, but I mean it definitely affected the touring the most. Like we were out in Berlin at the time in Europe, and then just kind of all just cut, as it was for everyone. But pretty strange to be like mentally prepared for the run to be out of the country for the whole year, and then just be back at my parents' house in the countryside of the UK. I was kind of like, oh, all right, this is not much like everyone had to deal with. But so that was pretty strange, but more so for the touring. And actually, I wouldn't have made Who Cares without the pandemic. So there's a silver lining.
So you returned home at that time. Was there any particular reason why? Was that just a place during that time that you felt, just more comfortable to be, or?
Well, in honesty, I was living in a hotel, and the hotel were like, we got to close, and you're like the last person here. So I was like, well, I got to go somewhere. Like,
Right.
my friends are like, back at their own house. I'm like, oh, I'll just go back to my parents, and just went and hung with my mom and dad.
Wow.
It
Wow.
was nice. So I get along with them well. We have great relationships. So it was actually mostly really, really good to be there.
hmm And generally, given what your career was doing at that time that you sort of moved back, like, I don't know, were you able to kind of take in, I'm sure they've expressed to you before, but, basically become well aware of, generally their feelings on your music and just kind of like, your growing profile in the music world and everything?
Yeah, that they've always actually been pretty understanding, and like they're different towards it. My dad loves it and loves to kind of come to the shows, and like he loves knowing about what's going on, and is like, kind of a fan. And my mother is as much a fan, but she's also like, I'm like her boy. So to me, she's like more interested in how Alex is doing than like Rex Orange County kind of thing, if that makes sense. But they're very understanding. They've always let me do what I love, and that's like, I can't be more thankful. I feel like that's crazy to me, to think that growing up with my parents were like, no, don't make music. It just like, I'm so blessed that they've always been supportive, honestly.
And, moving on, without kind of going back into the pandemic stuff and everything, how would you say generally your experience in recording and writing Who Cares sort of differed from that of Pony?
I mean, I've thought about this a lot because I've had the question, but it's a good question because it's so different. And the Pony's something that took me a really, really long time. The two big differences I would say is Pony took a long time, Who Cares didn't really. And on Pony, I felt like I was torturing myself trying to write it for many reasons, finding it difficult to not worry about what everyone else is thinking. And Who Cares was like, all right, let me just try and say who fucking cares. And like, just actually the opposite, where I was as kind of free as possible. And definitely why that was quicker. Not overthinking. I'd say the two biggest. I was definitely overthinking, and I still am proud of Pony and happy that that's where I was at then, and that's what I was on. I wanted to do something super polished that sounded like it took over a year to make in my head, but like they're very different albums, and I don't think you could necessarily tell which one was made where or was taken, how long, which one each took, and it's kind of, they're very different, but I'm proud of it. I'm more happy with Who Cares because it felt a lot more satisfying to make.
That's interesting to hear. Would you say comparatively, for at least in your own opinion, that Who Cares comes off a little less polished than Pony?
In my like all knowing of what it
Yeah,
kind of had,
like how you did it.
as best I can be without being too close to it. Yeah, it feels to me less polished, but it's funny because so a lot of things I feel about it is often not what people think. It often doesn't add up. Or my least favorite on the album is some people's favorites, or my favorite it doesn't go down. Like you kind of it's nice to just give it away because it's just out of my hands now, and people kind of will think what they like. I can try and explain as much as I like, but yeah, it's up to everyone else, kind of.
Yeah. No, I mean, let's talk about a characteristic because of the record, because I can see what you're saying, but simultaneously, like, this huge influx of like string arrangements. Did you have strings come in, or was it like kind of like a synth thing or a VST, or like that you were?
It was actually samples. It was actually like
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
pack of like a pre-made bunch of like they must have been recorded in it was like early 2000s, and Benny Sings, the producer, had these strings, and it was kind of like going through them. I'd never heard them, and he's like, yeah, I just haven't used many of these. And I'm like, we should absolutely. He made a few beats with them, a few songs, made Keep It Up and Open a Window on the first couple of days, and Worth It as well. And we're like, these strings are helping, like bringing us a lot of life right now. Let's just like see what we can do with it. And chopped up a lot. He is pitching them down, reversing things until it was just a whole new song. And so they brought a lot of the juice. They were like a tree for the album with the fruit of like the songs was like, we were just kind of come, but then tried other things. There were certain things that didn't work, as I'm sure you can imagine. But yeah, the strings were a blessing, I think.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say like I hear what you're saying in terms of like the difference in styles or aesthetics, but the strings do like bring a serious note of refinement, to the songs and the record. And, it is interesting to kind of hear that the writing process was almost orbiting around them a little bit, because you do kind of get the sense that the songs really do feel inspired by them in a way.
For sure. It was Orbital's a great word. They were really like I did actually write a lot of the songs around those parts, and I must shout out to Benny Sings as well, who is just like he's a machine in the studio. It's like different to anything I've ever seen. He's just very, very doesn't overthink anything. He's very productive and very kind of like carefree, and kind of like, even though he really, really, really cares and loves music and really loves what he does, it's kind of like whatever. It's all very sort of non-biased and like make as much as we can in the day. And it's not about like hanging out. It's like let's go. It's like this is kind of a job for him, and it's different to how I often approach it. And I think that definitely helped with coming up with quite a lot of ideas.
Well, let's talk about him for a minute, because obviously if you look at the writer credits and everything and producer credits for the record, like obviously he's a pivotal sort of key element of the album and its whole process. Like, how did you guys link up originally, and when did you decide like to basically bring him into the whole process here for the record from beginning to end, essentially?
We met in 2016, 2017, I think 2017. And I had been a fan of him for a long time, like just literally a child looking on YouTube and finding him, and just thinking like, this is like a solo artist I hadn't, a sort of realm of solo artists that I hadn't really thought about, which was this like super sweet songs with like really kind of like particular harmony, and the instrumentation was like glockenspiels and drum machines, and then like really nice sounding upright piano and Rhodes. And I was like, man, why haven't I thought of this kind of like it was a huge influence for me. I mean, if you go and look at his early music and mine, it's like I was really heavily inspired, and he knows this. I don't know that there would really be a Rex Orange County as it is without him. I feel hugely in debt to him, and in a way that doing that album was like this sort of like this thing, we're cut from the same cloth, and I've come up sort of at a different time to him, yet from a really similar perspective, but doing it very differently. And we're a good match because we're quite different, and we're quite different in stages in life, different approaches. As I said, like he kind of inspires me to like, oh, I don't want to finish this song. I don't want him to be like, well, where's the lyrics? In a weird way, I'm like, I really want to impress him. I kind of want to just like get this done. But he's easy to be around, and he's a legend, man. I mean, I just got to say, it's a big thanks to him for my music in general, but especially this album. I'm glad I got to do the whole thing, start to finish, with him.
And, initially, were you guys just kind of like working on some tracks here and there? And then as they were kind of panning out in the way that they were like, we just got to take this farther and just kind of finish up a whole project?
Pretty much exactly. It was 2 days in the beginning. With my friend Joe and I went out there just for 4 days and did 2 days in the studio and did, as I said, Keep It Up, Open a Window, Worth It, The Shade as well. All in those 2 days, and we were like, man, this is like, plus some other ideas that weren't as good. And I'm like, this is like, we made 7, 8 songs in 2 days. It's like, we should maybe, if we come back like a week, then we probably have, maybe 20, and did exactly that. Had maybe 23, and it got down to 12, and then it was 11, and then that's it. It was just it was super quick, but also nice not to take away from the fact that we were really in there each day and like just not kind of like 10 till 6 p.m. and just put our everything into it.
So, you guys kind of developed Open a Window early on. Like, when exactly in the process of crafting the record did like the Tyler feature come to mind, or, grow in your head as something, oh, we need to make this happen?
Honestly, pretty early, not in the room doing it, but because it was made with a bunch of others, I kind of didn't notice it at first, actually. As far as, I mean, I didn't realize how much I loved it when first making it, and sort of went away from it, and then a day or two afterwards listening back, and I think it was that moment, so maybe a couple of days after making it, hearing it back and sort of forgotten what it had sounded like, and then hearing it again and being like, this feels like, the first thing I thought was like Erykah Badu and Tyler, and the idea of her singing on it would have been amazing. We did try and reach out, it didn't happen, but he it's not like it was going to be one of the two. I kind of wanted them both, he didn't even say anything. I just texted him the song, and he was like, cool, what's the BPM? Just wanted to know the tempo, and then send him the parts. And it's like, that's my brother, man. I mean, he's done so much for me, of course, as you know, and like, it was so, I'm so blessed that we were able to do another song, and I'm so happy with what he did too, and it makes complete sense. And it's funny because I'm really on that song, so like confused and so sort of like wanting to, like, really like feeling guilty and shameful and like all this, like, oh, I don't know what to do. And he's so the opposite. And he's so just like, bro, shut the fuck up, like, get on with it, get out and like move on. Like, I would never be in that situation, as in he would. And just like the opposites, which it doesn't, I feel like that's not often the case. Like on a song, when a feature verse comes in, it's often like they're just singing about precise, like they're on the same tip as the other artists. But it was almost like we were kind of from opposing sides. That's my guy. I'm very happy that I worked out.
A lot of the stuff that you're talking about right now in terms of like second guessing or being in your own head and that sort of thing, I feel like those feelings also very much come out in the lyrics of many of these tracks. I mean, to stay on Window, for example, there is a real strong note of escapism on that track in terms of like, what you're describing. I mean, what generally, maybe outside of what you've already been describing, do you feel like you're kind of escaping from on that song, and maybe other portions of this record where maybe you're kind of, giving a similar vibe?
Yeah, it's definitely a theme throughout the album of like wanting to disappear out of a situation, definitely at least wanting to change the situation that I'm in. I think it was definitely inspired by how I felt in recent years, like not directly kind of present. I'm actually in a pretty good place, but the last couple of years was pretty difficult. And even just like the beginning of my career, I was like, I had to figure out who to trust when I was working with people, and kind of like friendships changing and just life kind of like I was channeling a lot of like, it was also the pandemic. I can't lie. I wanted to get outside. And it was physically like I was bored as hell. And I was like,
a physical escape.
Let me physically out the house. Tyler was like, bro, this song sounds like you're trying to jump out the window. You got to chill. And I was like, oh no, that is not the incentive. But it absolutely was a lot of like feeling, it's like mentally trapped and wanting to break out. I suppose just kind of channeling that part for that song. It was, yeah. if that answers the question.
And also moving on to Keep It Up, which, as you already know, is a track that's been pretty stuck in my head as of late. But reflecting on the lyrics a lot, it does bring this like genuine sense of positivity, keeping your head in a good space. I mean, would you say, my question with the track, though, is like, would you say this song comes from a place of, this is genuinely how I'm feeling, so I'm just going to exert it? Or is it more of like a reminder of, I need to try to feel this way? I'm like making this as a reminder to almost like push myself into this space.
Definitely the latter. Definitely the I need to. It's like writing it down because I need to remember it. Like like the song is me telling myself that because it's something I should tell myself to do. Yeah, it's very easy to be like, if not in a good place, to be wanting to give up, and it's very very easy. It's sort of like the easy route, and yeah, I think keeping it up, as in carrying on when you like really don't want to, is actually super difficult. And so I've had times where it's very easy to get stuck in a place of like, man, I'm done with this shit. But actually, for me, it is pretty easy. So yeah, I definitely, it's definitely me attempting to give the motivation to myself and to anyone that wants to hear it.
I mean, given that you've almost like given yourself that message in your own song, and just, I don't know, what I like so much about the track is that it's just so happy-go-lucky in a way. Even though you were so deep, obviously, into the creative process of it, is it easy for you to go back and listen to it and take it as a reminder, or do you feel more overtaken of like, maybe memories of like, oh, this is how I made it and this is how it was done? Like, can you just take it as a literal message to yourself at this point, even though you recorded it?
Yeah, in all honesty, I take it more so as a message now since it's out, because I kind of it's all taken on a life of its own. When you put something out and there's questions about it, I almost am sometimes like, I've got to kind of like attempt to explain this, and things have, it's taken on its own life, and people have kind of like, I'm really glad people have seen it as that, as like a super kind of like a positive affirmation or like a motivation to like, let's keep going. When I'm not the person, I don't know if you could listen to me because I'm someone that's very often been like, man, fuck this, like I'm gonna give up. But so I think I needed to make that for myself. But yeah, sorry, yeah.
No, I mean, no, that's honestly, that's beautiful that you could kind of take that from it, because I mean, we have a lot of conversations with different artists on here, and often there is usually sort of like a struggle or a difficulty with being able to consume their own art with any sort of outside perspective because of like how close they are to the process. And I mean, honestly, from what you're describing is sort of unique. Usually some people are so engrossed in the process, they can't think of anything else other than the process of what went into everything that they do, and just sort of like take it for what it is.
Yeah, I would say it's easier for me with Who Cares to see it for what it was and not look at the like. Remember when it took me hours to get that one vocal, because there's many. Pony, I could tell you there's like traumatizing parts of like, I really want to get this thing that now I'm like,
right. That was my other question. Are the, like, is that the case with older projects?
sure, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd say Pony, there's the one where it was most sort of stressed over. Well, not stressed, but like as in I really was like, oh no, I want to really go into the depths of sort of like what I thought was the detail. But with the project before that, Apricot Princess was really similarly carefree to Who Cares, and was the first one was absolutely like, I was hungry and no one was listening, so I was like, I guess I'll do what I want. I'm not self-conscious about anything. Like, who gives a shit? And then it turned out, some people give a shit, and so I got it. Now I got to follow up, and that's when it gets a little harder. To me, it was Pony that was like, that was harder to listen to. I don't listen to that much. I don't listen to much of it once it's out, but I hear it a lot on tour, and I'm never like, oh, I hate my own music, because it'd be great if it came out when it did. As I said, if it comes out tomorrow in 10 years, it's the same song, and like it's floating in the ether. It's just it's the same song, and so I'm proud of almost everything I put out.
Mm-hmm. So, given what you just said, you'd say like the context or like the paradigm or like whatever are the prevalent music trends kind of coasting at the time that you release something is not something that usually phases you?
No, it's no. Especially not until as of recently, I'm sort of increasingly more aware because I think the world is a certain way, and as you know, it's very much there's a lot of things online and the internet that there's a way to put yourself out there. And but no, I really and there's certain things that go there's formulas for like pop music. That's there's such thing, and I could study if I and certain things I choose to study is, but I keep it more within my taste. I try and not look at just like, oh, this is doing really well. So with anything, I've never ever looked at something and been like, well, that's like what's popping off, so I got to do it. But if there's something in me that's like, I love this, like I'm more likely to put out something that sounds like it's from that should have come out in the 70s than like 2023. Like I'm not trying to go like probably love that. I probably love that shit more than that maybe. And it kind of depends on the context, of course, but I try to not get phased too much by what's going on outside.
Well, speaking of that a little bit, we have a thorough fan question from Sarah B. like asking, what has inspired you to mix these elements of orchestral music, jazz, and R&B? Are there certain artists or, records or eras of music, some of which just kind of editorializing here may call back to the 90s or like the early 2000s that, sort of like been inspirational to you on that end?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was definitely Stevie Wonder's like my probably top inspiration music for songwriting and musically. And then, yeah, I'd say the 70s and then skipping the 80s a little bit, but the 90s definitely. There's a lot of like hip hop, like production stuff from Benny that's super inspired by like early 2000s and 90s. And he's a big fan of like Common and Soulquarians and that kind of like, we love like D'Angelo and Erica, like I said, and like that kind of, I don't know that I'm not going to say the album sounds anything like that, but it's, I suppose the roots of like the roots of our,
another good group. Yeah.
Of our cloth, like musical, what we love is like, it's the same. And I suppose it's definitely taken from older music than it was kind of like music today. So I said to Ben, I was like, what are you listening to now? And he's like, not much, man. Like, not much. I don't really listen to new music. I know what I love. And that's what I listen to. And it's like a couple of artists and like he hears songs, but he's like, I don't need to listen, unless I get showed stuff. I don't really like go hunting for music, which I find interesting.
I also wanted to ask you about some of the tracks on here, like "One in a Million" and "Amazing," which I think are some of the most devoted love songs I think I've heard in a minute. Something going on that end that's like really kind of lit that fire in you or something? I mean, you don't need to get super personal or anything, but
I mean, the album is very much, as I said, channeling like kind of different parts of whether it's super present or it's things that I've felt in the past or it's stuff that I want to feel. In all honesty, I definitely, as I was talking about like caring about what other people think, I felt like I've learned that there's like such thing as just keeping certain like things of my real life out of like the Rex life, and it's I've learned from many things and kind of feel as though it's like I want to keep some stuff to myself and keep some privacy in some areas. And like, I've been in love many times, is all I can say. And I could write a great love song whether I'm with somebody or not. I could write a heartbreak song whether I'm heartbroken or not. Because I feel like I know how it feels. I probably write the best one in each, like whilst I'm in them, probably. But I know how they feel. I'll be channeling them.
There's a flex. I think that's a flex. That's a flex right there.
And also trying not to care too much about like it being super directly like hot on my sleeve. This is like what's going on in my life, and I want everyone to know. Just kind of like trying to be a little bit more carefree.
No, I definitely get that sense from the record, but like there's also, I don't know, it's maybe this is something you can explain for me. Like one of the things that I think is a little funny about your writing style is that, especially on this record, that there is that feeling of being carefree, but it's a little bittersweet as well. And sometimes the way that I think that you mark that is, we're hearing these very lovely, easygoing, charming songs that are laced with these strings, but then every once in a while you'll put out these strategically dropped F-bombs. Like, Where it's like, you're vibing, then all of a sudden you're just like, fuck this. And it's like, oh, okay. He's got some strong feelings here. Like, given the vibe of the music and everything, and how rare the F-bombs are, whenever you're dropping one, is there kind of a process, or is it just kind of coming out as they do?
Definitely though the F bombs that are coming out as they do, but the kind of the kind of like juxtaposed super either stressed or kind of angry or confused, any kind of lyrics of like negative feelings is often over a beautiful sounding song and like usually
Right.
very happy sounding song, and that's what I really love. It's like that's where I'm that's intentional. And where I say fuck is like sorry where I say
Oh no,
the
you
F,
can say fuck. You're invited. Yeah, it's totally cool.
wherever I say fuck is not planned as much, but like open a window, I said stuck here, and then I said fuck this. That was probably because it rhymed, to be honest, rather than like, oh, I really want to be. But it also means I can put my middle fingers up at the show, and that's fun.
No, it was just something I guess I was thinking about. Also in context, I saw this like really funny article, I think on Billboard, that was an editorial about like some up and coming female pop singers or songwriters that like might have certain songs popping off on TikTok, for example, and it's like the key to their success: strategically placed F bombs, and it's like is like I feel like, I mean, at least being in my 30s, I feel like I kind of moved through these eras where just like we pretty much just like staled out edginess, like like almost nothing can be edgy anymore, but all of a sudden like people are like, oh, did you hear they said F? Did you hear they said the F? And it seems like, I don't know, maybe in a way it's hitting a little bit harder when something is coming off sweet instrumentally or emotionally.
Well, especially if it's strategically placed.
Yeah, especially if it's strategically placed.
Yeah.
As a songwriter, just to get a barometer like test here, would you say you're more of like a McCartney guy or a Lennon guy?
Oh man, I'm a more of a McCartney guy.
That would be my guess. That's my guess.
Big time though. I'm like, and the thing is, John Lennon to me is like very, 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 very cool. He was incredibly cool.
Right.
Like especially watching that doc. And Paul was more like me. He was just like, maybe we should be like, it's like a nuts. Like he's just like a real artist. And John was like sat back smoking cigarettes, like super cool. And I'm like, that's cool, but I can't relate. Like Paul is like a real artist, and not that John wasn't. I'm absolutely a huge fan of all of them. My favorite's actually Ringo after watching the doc. Like I got newfound big love for Ringo. Not that I didn't love him before, but yeah, Paul, the bass playing is just out of this world. His solo stuff's my favorite as well. And yeah, what are you?
Oh, I'm probably more into John. I'm probably more into John personally, but I will say, like, the coolness. Would you say you personally don't identify with being cool, or is the coolness more of like an aloofness that you again don't really like? You don't feel that in yourself, and maybe there's sort of more of like a attention to Paul that you feel like you kind of vibe with.
Yeah, that's a really good question actually. When I said cool, it's like, actually everybody has a different definition to cool, and maybe my definition is just like not like me. Like John and I didn't feel that similar. I was watching him, like he, just I don't know, something about Paul's goofiness, and maybe that's. But actually, some of the goofiest people to me are the coolest, and some of the
Right.
real like the coolest thing to me is it's like a real nerd, like you, people who I work with who love like one thing, and so we find everyone who really loves that thing, and that's the coolest thing to me. So actually, I don't know, maybe that's why I actually think Paul is cool. I don't know, I could just maybe relate with Paul a little more because he's kind of just, I saw watching him sing kind of nuts, and just in love with a lot of his bass line.
No, I get that, and also as a kid, like I think the iconography of John, I think, always led me to operate under the assumption that he was like maybe the artsier of the two in the dynamic. But then it's like, as I got older and, was able to kind of dive further into Paul's catalog, like, his Paul McCartney 2 solo record is absolutely insane. I think you have to be completely off your rocker to write Temporary Secretary. John never wrote Temporary Secretary. I mean, John has done some crazy shit, obviously like Plastic Ono Band and so on and so forth. But like Temporary Secretary is like a level of nuttiness that few artists with the visibility of Paul McCartney have ever approached.
He had the balls to do that and also be Paul McCartney. This is post Beatles. Like, this is crazy. He was like, I'm risking it all. But that song is like, that's my favorite though. And my boy Joe Mack, who is like really my kind of Beatles. Thanks to him, he's really like shown me so much to what to love. Not that I wasn't like a real fan anyway, but he kind of put me onto the deep cuts and like, and it's Temporary Secretary put me on. It's like, game changer. I love that song.
Hearing stuff like that, do you ever personally feel tempted to just be like, I'm gonna do or record or release just like the weirdest fucking thing that I can think of and just do that?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, I had a moment in the pandemic, in the lockdown, where I'm like, I have to record music that I won't release. I have to try and write and do. This is kind of gearing up for, because I have to just write some shit that's not going out, and I still have it, and it's cool and it's fun, and it's like, it's definitely like certain things that are super honest and certain things that are like it's quite brash and like musically kind of not so clean, and actually certain things of it like super clean. Maybe that's the other thing. I really I had to really indulge in making something where I didn't care at all what people were going to think, because it was never going to drop. So yeah, it's definitely come to mind. I also grew up wanting to do like a band. Like I grew up loving punk, pop punk, sorry, and pretty kind of like, I loved Blink and Green Day, so I sort of just wanted to play drums in a band like that. And even now, I'm like, I would love to have like a 3-piece or something and just do like, just put the drive pedal on, me on guitar, or whatever. I'm so into switching it up and trying to be different, not do the same thing over and over again.
Has the resurgence of pop punk inspired you at all lately? Are you digging any of these new records? Are you listening to the new Avril Lavigne record?
I'm not. Although I was a big fan of her growing up and like Complicated and Hot. And
right. Classics.
Classics. Songs like really changed changed how I looked at things. But I met the bassist from Turnstile the other day. He's a great guy, and I'm a fan of Turnstile.
That record is awesome.
That record is fantastic. And other than that, it's I gotta go and watch some more of your videos and get put on to some.
Hey, you know what? Like MGK and Willow, emo girl. It's gonna change the emo game. Like there's no song out there like it.
I'll check it out. I haven't heard it yet, but I'll check it out.
Space Jam is asking, the movie. Yes, the literal movie, the film is in chat and wants to know what is your favorite show and movie as of right now. And further from there, if those mediums typically ever kind of become a place of inspiration for you in what you do.
Yeah, it's a good one. I did see the new Space Jam with LeBron. I didn't like it very much.
Who cares as a concept around? We can dive into that as well if you want.
No, I love, for some reason at the moment, really into Succession and Ozark, like stressful series. I like kind of like things where I'm like, I'm about to die. I don't know.
You want to be stressed.
I just want to be stressed. I thought about this the other day. It's like, why do we like this? Like Breaking Bad's like one of my favorite things. Like it's one of my favorite shows ever. I'm like, why did I enjoy seeing this man just like crumble, and like, maybe it's just because I'm glad it's not my life. Maybe I look at it, I'm like, well, at least that's not me. Like sometimes I watch it with my friends and they're like, I really hope I never get mixed up in like a drug cartel. I'm like, bro, you're good. This is why we're sat at home watching Ozark and we're fine. Like maybe that's what's comforting about it. But yeah, Succession is great. I love Kendall, whoever plays the character Kendall in Succession. To me is like, I believe him more than most. I kind of believe he is Kendall. Signs like I was like blown away by him.
With Breaking Bad, sometimes I like to think, especially given your origins, like if Walter could have just like when he got his diagnosis, just like walked into the NHS, like there would have been no show. The show it just would have been.
We would have been good.
Yeah.
This is the thing I gotta say. Big shout out to the NHS and the UK and Walter White. And I'm sorry, Walter White. He didn't make it because he was in Albuquerque instead.
Right. Right. That's probably why you guys have a lot less meth over there too.
Yeah, I reckon so.
Yeah. It's got to definitely decrease the amount of meth that people are cooking.
I think so. I hope so, honestly.
So now that this album is sort of done and in the can, and we've talked a little bit about a temporary secretary, and I've planted that seed in your brain. For the next, are you frozen again? Oh, there you are.
Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
No, you're fine. For the next project, have you begun conceptualizing anything in any way, or are you just like pretty much focused on what the performances are going to look like in the near future?
I've it's a bit of both. I've definitely got a lot of the tour on my mind, but was working on a project after Pony that I'm still working on now that had, like when went to Amsterdam to do Who Cares was sort of like a side note and did that and was like finished the whole thing. I'm like, okay, let's do this now, but I've still got that in the back of my head. So this other album kind of that I've been working on for a while is definitely conceptualized.
What makes this other project, I always find that interesting when, sort of artists kind of perceive their work in that way. Like, what would you say makes this record different to where when you started kind of conceptualizing one, but then these other songs started coming together, you're like, no, these are a separate thing. Like, this is not, because some people just sort of look at it, well, songs are songs and they're going to come together as they come together. But, these are in kind of a different work, a different batch for you. What kind of separates them? What's that divider there?
That's a good one because I feel like I've noticed recently that I really love working with one person on everything kind of and
It's the work experience.
Yeah, it's like the whole thing. I kind of like the idea of you can almost like when people make an album and it's like this one was done with this guy, this one was done over here, this one was done like a year. I'm like, that's stressful. How could I don't know, something about that sounds so stressful. I need the idea of it all being like the same thought, the same kind of intention, even if it takes a year or it takes 12 days. Like I think each album I've kind of stuck with one person and yeah, Benny just was that person for
Got
this.
it. Yeah. No, some bands have weird concept records where they're like, we recorded this one in this warehouse in Texas, and this other one was in on a mountainside in this place, and this other one was.
I would say that this other one is like conceptually pretty different as well, and it's not. This one's definitely a bit more free as to who it's with. There is someone in mind, a good friend of mine that I'm working with a lot now, but like it's definitely a different type of album, and it's definitely a little bit more in depth, and it's like longer songs, but we'll see. You'll see, I think.
Mm-hmm. With what you accomplished here with Benny on this LP, for you personally, in terms of what you want to achieve creatively into the future, would you say this is something that like box is sort of like checked and we want to do something else, or could you see yourself doing another whole record with Benny in the future at some point?
Yeah, that's good. I don't know. I love working with him and we have a great time, and it feels like we could always come up with something else. He's so incredibly productive and creative that I'm sort of like, I just feel like we could always, but maybe we did rinse it a little bit. Like we went in and did as much as we could until we were making songs that we were just like, I don't know anymore, like until we were just making ideas and was like, I think we've got enough good stuff here. So maybe a couple years recharge, and then I'll go back, see him, see what happens.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, considering what you're saying about your process there, like, is there anybody else in terms of like production or songwriting that you would hope to be able to work with at some point in the future?
I mean, I was a huge Pharrell fan growing up, huge NERD fan. And I feel like his production has changed so much over the years, and where he's at now is fascinating to me. And I'd love to see what we would make. I don't know, that's someone I've always loved. I'm sure there's a few. I find it's often people who I'm close with it's people who I've met and really get along with in real life before it just being like, oh, let's work together, let's make an album. It's often someone I have a good relationship with.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, man. The record so far is sounding really good, and hope to have some thoughts out on it soon. And everybody in chat is really hype about it and loving it and freaking out about it. And I appreciate you taking the time to come through and talk with us about the LP, and just be an open book and a great guest.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry about my terrible internet, and thanks again for having me up here. I look forward to speaking to you again, man.
No, this was definitely some of the most like the greatest eventful bad internet that we've had, and it was only interrupted for one single section, Like there's been way worse internet, believe me. Like
Okay, yeah.
this was a smooth ride. You've been a joy.
Man, likewise. And I was nervous too. I wanted to make sure that I did this, make sure that we got this good. So I'm really glad. I'm really glad
No,
we
this
got
is
it.
great. Like you look chill in that room, very cozy in your hoodie. Before you go, do you want to like drop a strategically placed F bomb or anything like that, or
Fuck. Yeah.
fuck?